I love. I enjoy watching you and your whole family on Facebook.
Crazy people.
Never have a dull moment.
No, not much, really don't.
Yeah, that's exciting.
And yes, I it's only not exciting. You can't.
Independent audit for fiscal year 9/30/2020, Daniel Anderson from Malden Jenkins.
Chair, I'd like to introduce Daniel Anderson to deliver our audit this year. Just for a bit of history for Commissioner Santiago, Commissioner Malden and Jenkins is our auditor. They've been our auditor for the last 5 years. Daniel, this is his second audit. He took over for Trey, who had done our audit for the first 3 years. And we're excited to have him here to present today. So as you know, the district is celebrating its 40th birthday this year. And just a bit of a history with this particular audit firm. For 35 years, we were just the Citrus Connection, the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District focused on the specific geographic areas, you know. And we had an audit firm we were very happy with. But after we merged, recognizing that we were effectively doubling the number of grants that we had and becoming a more complex organization, and that you all were becoming a major funding partner, we felt like it was time to change audit firms, to have a fresh perspective. Not that there was anything wrong with the last audit firm, but to look at that so that the county was comfortable that the dollars that were being given to the county were staying within the county, and that the dollars within the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District that the Lakeland area taxpayers pay were staying within the district, and that the transportation disadvantage funds were being used as well. So that's why the audit firm we're presenting to you today is relatively new, and it really is a genesis of who the new Citrus Connection is as the countywide provider. So with that.
You also have expanded state and federal dollars to track in that growth process also.
Correct. So we became the designated federal recipient for the Winter Haven urbanized area, the rural transportation services from the county. Transportation disadvantaged was a completely new business line for the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District. And as David will talk about today under the financial reports, we now have additional CARES funding where we've created new funds. And then 1.9 trillion coming down the pike, which we'll talk about again today, even more additional CARES funding. So with additional complexity becomes, you're correct, additional accounting principles. So.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here this morning. As Tom mentioned, my name is Daniel Anderson, and I'm an audit director with Malden & Jenkins, and I have responsibility for the district's 2020 year-end audit. You should have in front of you two documents. One is the audited financial statements themselves. One is a document that we refer to as our auditor's discussion and analysis, and this provides our required communications to governance. My presentation is going to highlight this second document. So certainly stop me if you have any questions throughout the presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end as well. A brief agenda for the presentation. I'll talk about some highlights and an overview of Malden and Jenkins. As Tom mentioned, we are relatively new to the district. I'll go through the 2020 financial statements and the reports that you'll find within that document, go through the required communications in the auditor's discussion and analysis, and then answer any questions or comments you may have. So first, Malden and Jenkins, we are a large regional audit organization that's been serving local governments for over 100 years now. Our service footprint includes 2 offices in Florida, Bradenton and Sarasota, as well as 7 other offices throughout Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Go to the next slide. Our governmental practice is the firm's largest niche. We serve about 110,000 hours of governmental entities on an annual basis. Our team is led by over 100 professionals that have current governmental experience, including 25 partners and directors such as myself, who spend 100% of my time only serving governmental entities. Our governmental practice serves about 500 total governmental entities, including 50 standalone business types and 12 transportation agencies. So we do have tremendous experience just in transit districts. You talked about the grants that you're seeing. When we perform the single audits for the district here, that's not the only time we're seeing those grants. So we're testing those same federal grant expenditures with some of these other entities as well, and I've listed them out there. And then one thing that we do like to have is annually we offer at least 16 hours of free continuing education to our clients. So David and Rhonda and their team certainly have the opportunity to get some continuing education. That extends to the board as well. So I know not everyone loves governmental accounting. However, if you do want to get some education on it, certainly you're welcome to attend any of our sessions. In the audited financial statements, we do issue 4 reports. The first one is the main report that we issue, and it's our auditor's report on the fair presentation of the financial statements. In that report, you'll note that we've issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest form of assurance that we can render. The last 3 are towards the back of the document. The first we refer to as a yellow book report, which is a report over the compliance with laws and regulations in accordance with governmental auditing standards. This report is what we refer to as a negative assurance report. So you don't really notice anything when you read that unless we note something significant that we want to identify to you. There were no issues noted in that report, which is good news for the district. Mm-hmm. We did perform a single audit over 3 major programs, 1 federal and 2 state. And that report that you'll note, based on the testing of compliance with those grant requirements, we noted no issues in regards to the district's expenditures for those 3 programs tested. And then the last report is the independent auditor's management letter, and that's required by the rules of the Auditor General. And again, they go through different compliance requirements that we're performing and evaluating as we go through the audit process. There were no issues noted in that report as well. Some of the required communications, ultimately management and the board is responsible for the accounting policies and statements for the district. In performing our audit, we encountered no difficulties with management. There were no significant audit adjustments that were proposed during the course of the audit, and there were no uncorrected misstatements where we would propose an adjustment and management elected to pass on that, which is very great. We had no disagreements with management concerning the application of any significant accounting policies or principles. At the conclusion of the audit, we did obtain written representations from management concerning the accuracy of the information provided to us. We're not aware of management's consultations with any other accountants or what we refer to as opinion shopping. There were no significant issues discussed with management. And then lastly, we are independent of the district. One more thing before I finish. I know that when I was here last year, it's kind of crazy to think that, this time last year, we were about to change our lives pretty drastically. But one of the things that was brought up was, given our experience with other special districts and transit districts, any best practices that we could bring to you. I can tell you, given that everything that happened with COVID, we evaluated internal controls pre-COVID, we evaluated internal controls post-COVID, and I think it's a very big compliment of the district that the internal controls were in place throughout the entire time. There were no issues getting us any of the information while the year-end closeouts were great. So it's a true testament to David and Rhonda and their staff for the great work that they do, and the controls that are in place for the district. So I did want to point that out. If I were to give a best practice, I'll tell you one thing that is just very much trending in governmental accounting and really, I guess, everywhere is concerning cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. So you will see something in the auditor's discussion and analysis about cybersecurity. The city of Oldsmar had their water system had an attempted hack just about a month ago. So it's always good to be constantly evaluating what is the cybersecurity framework of the district, where are our potential threats, where are we vulnerable, what sort of testing are we doing to make sure that we're preventing things from happening in the future? And again, we evaluate this as part of our audit, and there were no issues identified, but it's such a fast changing topic that it's always something certainly on a periodic basis to be evaluating. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
It's tough to have any.
When you get a kind of, I know, finding.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Anderson. We appreciate it very much. All right, yes, Commissioner Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not a question for, of course, him, but he did bring up something, and I'd like to hear from our executive director about cybersecurity. Where are we? How have we made sure that we are internally done things to support any hiccups that may or may not occur?
Absolutely. Ivan, can you talk a little bit about what we've been doing as far as cybersecurity and how we work with our partners at Alltech for cybersecurity?
So as in what now?
Cybersecurity. Can you just talk a little bit? The commissioner's asking about some of the things that we're doing to keep our data safe, cybersecurity.
Sure.
Yeah, so I know with Alltech, because they're our partners, they've been running like the latest firmware updates, make sure we're up to date. Actually last night, they ran an update, make we're all by code and that we're not getting any ransomware or nothing. So I know they manage all that. So from on their standpoint, we're up to date. And I know they run tests, I think like every week to make sure.
So they are in contact, or we're in contact?
Yeah.
Make sure these kind of things are being checked out and make sure that we're not seeing any kind of questionable situation.
Correct, yes.
I think, Commissioner, where we need to look in the future and some of the things that we're looking at are just our general security here at the district. We recently had an incident at the district and looking at how our video cameras, for example, record audio, whether it's triggered by movement or whether it's passively recording, those types of things. So I know that's maybe not the kind of cybersecurity that he's talking about as far as people hacking in or intruding in the systems. But I think, Bill, if there's one area that's kind of recently come up as far as cybersecurity and security in general, would you agree it's the video cameras and audio recording? Is there anything you'd like to add?
Excuse me. We have one camera that records audio up at the front of the customer service area. And you can imagine if every sound was picked up by that camera, what kind of data we would have floating around. So it was set to a motion instead of audio. But we are looking into it now to get a different camera that will be able to pick up motion and voice audio.
If I may, for the board, 3 years ago, we issued an RFP and we hired a local IT company, Alltech Services, and they provided technical oversight management for IT operations. Along with that, and in combination, we have two IT technicians that run the day-to-day services. But all the technical oversight regarding cybersecurity and information transformation or information technology is provided by the consultant, very capable local company.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Well, some of the more recent ways for this intrusion is actually not even through the operating system, it's through emails.
Yeah.
And so do you do any kind, does Alltech provide any kind of testing to tempt and fail users of emails within Citrus Connection on a regular basis?
Yeah, we do a lot of filtering and we also manage it on O365 that where we block stuff coming in. And also our users are pretty aware if something does get through, they're like, hey, this doesn't look like it's coming from the email. So then they'll send it to us and we block it right away.
Good.
But we do catch a lot of it and then we get alerts to those trying to filter in and stuff.
As a matter of fact, we have had almost 5 instances where very covertly we had emails to wire money. I mean, significant money, and in consultation with the local, the staff on board and Alltech, we're able to track them down. One was from New York and one was from the Midwest, and block them.
Very interesting, Mr. Mayor. It's a sophisticated hack. It almost always occurs when either Mr. Prasad is out of the country or the state or I am. So it's a very targeted attack when they somehow know that senior leadership is out of the office.
Yeah.
And it's typically an attempt at them communicating with me that David is somehow in trouble or vice versa.
Do we have a game plan of reaction if something were to happen? Just like, if you have a pandemic response or a hurricane response, crisis response, do we have a cybersecurity response plan?
Everything, as far as I'm concerned, no, and everything is stored offsite.
It is,
So that we do have backups.
Okay,
yeah, we do have backups in case anything was to get compromised or we could fail over to.
do we have a process though of like, if X happens, then we go into the next steps of who's notified, how that works and how we shut it down?
Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, we had a field visit 2 months ago to Altech headquarters, and they have a uniform backup security program that we piggyback on.
Okay,
So everything will be, everything will be aligned. So if you saw something or something should happen, boom, this reaction.
Yes, and if there's an emergency, they will stop it. They will step in.
okay. Good.
Okay.
Any other questions? That's good
Didn't
discussion.
mean to get you off.
No, I think that was a great question, and I'm glad Mr. Anderson brought it up. Yeah, no, I think that was a good discussion. Thank you, sir. We really appreciate your work.
Yes, thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
to serve you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Same to you.
Okay. Ms. Killebrew Kinlaw, partnerships goes next.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes, this is
Sorry.
approval of the audit.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Motion and a second. All in favor of the audit?
Fine.
Opposed? All right.
Try and do better.
So sorry. It helps when you have this list beside here that says that what I should do. If
Yeah.
I would just simply read it. All right, number 4 on the agenda, partnership video.
This is just as a result of our fair shares every year. We just like to thank our partners, UAP partners and the municipality for their contribution and buy-in.
Nice work, James.
That's beautiful.
It's a nice,
Sorry.
And just for the public, really quick, UAP is?
Universal Access Program. So these are the companies and schools that we partner with to provide transportation to their organization. They in turn pay us for that service.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi, I'm Erin Killebrew Kinlaw, Director of External Affairs, and this week's episode of CCTV. Our mission here at Citrus Connection is to be the superior provider of transportation services to contribute to the economic growth and quality of life for the communities here in Polk County that we serve. This wouldn't be possible without tremendous support from our community partners. And so on behalf of Citrus Connection and to our riders, we would like to take a moment to share our appreciation. First to our municipalities and the Board of County Commissioners who continue to aid and support us in expanding public transportation whenever possible. We thank you. And to our universal access partners, Polk County Public Schools, Southeastern University, Polk State College, Legoland, and New Beginnings High School, who funds our Summer of Safety every year. Thank you so very much. Thank you again for assisting us in providing the best public transportation opportunities possible to the citizens of Polk County.
Great job, thank you. And thank you to Dave too. All of the CCTV packages are really well done.
Yeah.
Great work and very informative. Any other comments? Okay. Number 5, we're moving on to finance with Mr. Prasad.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
We have our various financial statements, first being LAMTD and the Transit District, financial through January 31st. The year-to-date budget is 33%. The actual revenues for the first 4 months, 5.4 million compared to the budget of 3.6. We are over revenues because of the ad valorem taxes. We have collected so far 93% or 4.8 million of our taxes. Expenses, again, 81% of the year-to-date budget. We are under expenses. Looking at the major revenues, fare box revenues continues to lag at 45% given the COVID environment. Our ad valorem is pretty much consistent with prior collection. FDOT grants, we bill those based on incurred expenses, and that's lagging. And the 5307 federal grants, we still don't have permission to draw those funds. However, we have enough positive cash flow based on the ad valorem. On the expense side, we looked at the major expenses, salaries and wages being 66% of the budget. Being a service organization, we are 19% under budget. Favorable variances, fuel expenses and parts, major expenses are under budget. So overall, revenues over expenses are 2.5 million. So we still have favorable cash flow. Normally, within the next remaining 6 months of the fiscal year, we start to it depends heavily on drawing our grants down because we have incurred 6 months worth of expenses.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Fuel expenses, what are your projections?
We projected 2.53 cost per gallon in the futures market, and we are running about 1.8.
Okay, good.
Under.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Other questions on LAMTD? All right.
All right, the next financial statement is for the agreement with Polk County for transit services. The year-to-date budget is 2.6 million, revenue is 2.4 million. Most of the revenues are from the grants match, which we received in advance upfront for cash flow purposes and matching the grants. And the city contribution, we have almost exceeded the max. We continue to draw on the grants. And as I said earlier, we have to incur the expenses first before we draw. Those are on a cash basis. Expenses are likewise 2.6 million budget, actual 2.1. We are at 79% of the budget for expenses. So in all areas, we are within the budget.
Questions?
Questions?
Thank you.
The next financial statement is for the transportation disadvantage program. This is on a July 1, June 30th fiscal year. The budget for year-to-date is 0.8 million. The actual revenues, 0.67 million or 78%. The actual expenses, 6.64 million compared to the 0.86 million budgeted expenses. Overall revenues is over expenses by 36,000. So the performance is within the budget and the revenues are over the expenses. So we have positive variances.
Great. Can we, really quick, I have a question. On the DOT funding for the LAMTD financials, are we just in a hold pattern to get that money in? Are we waiting? And is there something that needs to happen or?
No, we as I indicated, we bill those based on the actual expenses.
Okay.
However, billing to the FDOT is a manual process. And they are very, very, very slow in processing the bills.
Deliberate.
I will say that they go through a very thorough audit process. And if you're off a penny, it'll send it back.
Right. Yes, I've heard that
So
story.
it's kind of, we normally on an average have to submit an invoice about 4 times.
Okay.
So it kind of slow down the draw on the revenues.
Okay.
But there's no actual holdup.
There's no.
Other than a normal
It's
holdup.
normal. It's the normal
Hold up.
archaic system.
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome. Moving on to the Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security Fund.
Yes, we have decided to prepare a financial report to reflect the activities for the CARES funding. As you can see, we have received 4 grant awards totaling 15.1 million, of which capital is 8.7 million and operation is 6.4 million. We created 4 separate funds basically to ensure accountability because we are subject to the annual single audit. We want to make sure we do not commingle these funds with other operating funds and lose the identity and create any audit findings. Most of the activities are in operations. We have expensed 165,000 rate percent. And the capital expenses normally take a little longer to get kicked off the ground. So we have 3 years to spend these funds, and hopefully within the next 6 months, we'll be able to crank up the capital.
And Mr. Cheney will be giving a presentation under 6B regarding the East Polk County Garage, which is a major component of the county's CARES funding.
Commissioner Santiago.
Yeah, that's just what I was gonna ask. What are your plans on using this money? And you have 3 years to use it.
Yes, ma'am. We will be giving you an update on the largest project for the East County funds, which is a East Polk County maintenance facility. So we've got money in there we had money in there for COVID relief and new routes. Which, as you're aware, we received a exact corresponding funding cut from FDOT for the new routes. So we put those new routes on hold. And thanks to Erin and her team, we've communicated to the mayors of the Ridge Coalition as well as the county that those new routes will not start, but that does not impact their fair share agreement. So they understand nothing given, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So they're disappointed that they're not getting those new routes, but they're comfortable with it. The largest component for both the Lakeland area and the county are new vehicles. But the largest project for the east side of the county is a East Polk County maintenance facility, which Mr. Cheney will be giving you an update on here shortly, because all of the maintenance, Commissioner Santiago, for the entire county is done here at the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District. We had an agreement with the county where the county was providing maintenance for the vehicles through the merger, but we found it was much more beneficial to the taxpayers of Polk County that we do all of the maintenance here. So we were able to significantly reduce the costs associated with maintaining the county vehicles by doing it here. But Mr. Cheney will show that over time, by having an East County maintenance garage, we're going to be able to drive those costs down further. So that's the largest project.
I can imagine you would because of the distance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
I don't want to steal his thunder, but yes, he's got a pretty compelling presentation.
So
That,
Commissioner Walker is up first.
thank you. So the 1.25 million, nothing has been spent yet, or is he gonna tell us about that, or?
We'll talk about how the funds have been spent with the PD&E and that as well. And then we've incurred some costs with the architectural. Kind of have gotten to a point where we need to now discuss what the next step is for that. And then, of course, as you know, Commissioner Walker, for the Lakeland area CARES funds and all commissioners, as you know, you approved improvements here to 1212 George Jenkins, the parking lot, a lot of concrete replacement or concrete improvements. As you know, we still have historical issues here at the district. We fuel all of the vehicles, we wash the vehicles, and then we drive them onto a dirt lot where they sit all night. So paving that and doing some of those things. But Joe can talk about the Lakeland projects a little bit as well.
Okay. And Commissioner Lindsay.
that addresses the first COVID dollars that came in their allocation.
Yes.
There's about to be another batch that I think go directly to the agencies, to the cities, and to the county. So what is your next priority in particularly in capital? Because I hate incurring O&M, and when the money runs out, you gotta do something. But when you add an asset, that's a different scenario. So what? Maybe that's part of the next conversation, or we'll wait to find out.
I think it is, Commissioner. So Marcia came in this morning and has a dollar amount that the county is going to be receiving, or a general dollar amount. We still have not been given that or not aware of what that dollar amount is for transit. We expected that was going to be coming possibly later in the week. We're members of the Florida Public Transportation Association, and their executive director typically sends out a summary on what this means for transit. We haven't received that yet. But yes, we will have that discussion with you, and that may be something that is discussed or will be agendaed when you talk with Craig Collins, Dr. Collins, at the retreat, which is next month. Because by then we should definitely have what those dollars are.
Not Marcia's thunder, but the county expects to get about $146 million. And as we did the first time around, we established various buckets where we put those assets and how do you reach the people and put it in the community fastest. One of those buckets is to consider how do we supplement and support transit services to underserved areas. Now, that's one of the buckets under consideration. But if the funds that come your way directly address that need, then we can redirect.
Redirect some of your dollars, right?
We're kind of, all of us trying to figure out what's the most efficient way to
Serve.
spend these dollars most cost effectively. And we just have to stay in touch as how big is your payday and how big is our payday and how do we make sure so it's just a matter of staying in touch.
Yeah. Mr. Ray, do you have something you wanted to add?
Well, if I could, I know I've been I was the last couple of days involved with the National League of Cities Congressional Conference. And of course, this American Recovery Act dollars, these billions of dollars are coming our way. And as you just indicated, Commissioner Lenz, are going to cities, towns, villages, transportation, administrative situations as well. They laid out a chart. They provided us a chart just yesterday afternoon. It's like 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon, showing what dollars should go where. And I just asked that to be sent to you all, of course, as commissioners, so we'll know. So you probably just share it with what's going on as far as what the county may receive. So I think it is important we have that conversation because I don't want us to duplicate efforts.
Right.
We should be able to do what we can best to support our local area involving transportation or whatever it may be. We need to make sure we have that kind of conversation with each other.
I also think the onus is on the federal government to communicate exactly what those buckets are, because I think that's a little bit more nebulous than what is publicly being stated. So I'm not sure that we will have a transit bucket from this next round or not, if it will just filter through the county, which is what you're saying. We just need to make sure we align and that we're not double dipping and spending way too much money or over promising and under delivering in the future in sustainability.
Aaron has we've been texting.
Yes, I see.
Aaron has a phone call with Lisa Bacot, the executive director of the Florida Public Transportation Association, today at 3:00.
Awesome.
So that should give us an update on
Yeah.
if she's got Florida's transit allocation number. If anyone has it, it's going to be her. So we'll find out what we've got today.
That'd be great.
And we'll communicate individually with the board members pursuant to Sunshine Law once we get that number.
And just so the board is aware too, I've reached out to Florida DOT twice. Twice as the board chair of transit to figure out what the cuts look like, to see if they do correlate to what we're getting for CARES funding, because that changes the dynamic as well. But just so you all know, there's been ongoing discussion about that and we've yet to receive that number. The
phone call where you received the second confirmation from the district secretary at District 1 was a deliverable from his office directly to the city of Lakeland, to the Board of County Commissioners, and to the Lakeland Area Mass Transit District on exactly what the cuts would be to the highways programs, the airports programs, the transit programs. So that letter should impact everyone here at the table to solidify what our cuts are. And that phone call occurred approximately, I think, about 2 weeks ago. So hopefully that letter's forthcoming. Because again, the cuts that we keep referring to that have put the new route on hold are still based on the Zoom call we had with Paul Simmons. We have not formally received any notification yet, David, of that funding cut, correct? Right. Nor have we received official notification of the block grant funding cut. However, we're taking Paul as the district modal manager at his word, and the secretary has confirmed that there are those cuts. So hopefully more clarification to come. I realize we're being somewhat murky. I just think it's the fiscally conservative thing to do, to wait on those routes. And certainly Chair McCarley and Commissioner Lindsay had their reservations at the onset about adopting the staff recommendation of new routes with limited funds. So we'll hold on those.
Good times. Okay. Yes.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Julia Davis, for the record. So, and to your point, you were talking about the difference between operating purchases and capital purchases. So the TPO is working on a study for what land would be appropriate to put the East County facility for maintenance, not the garage, fueling garage, but the maintenance building. While you all are exploring the buckets and what funding streams are available and what is coming, please keep that in mind, that need for the purchase of land. And if you hear of anything useful, certainly let Tom know, and then Tom could talk to me about that. Because the TPO has a study underway for LAMTD for this type of thing.
Thank you. And we'll get to more about the East Polk Garage, a couple items down the agenda, so we can.
Yes, this study that the TPO is doing is a little separate from the garage. It's bigger.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Julia. All right, Mr. Prasad, moving on.
The next agenda item is for approval. It's the annual application for the county formula grants for rural area services. The total amount is $1 million with a 50% match locally that comes from the county grants match. So we're seeking board approval for the grant application.
Move approval of resolution 21-08.
Thank you.
Second.
And second, discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
The final item on the finance agenda is again seeking approval for FTA section 5310 for capital funds totaling $11,000 for 2 new radios for the buses. There's 80-10-10 match, 80 federal, 10 state, and 10% county. We are seeking board approval.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. It passes. We're up to fleet maintenance with Mr. Cheney.
What you have before you is a request for supplemental funding for the replacement of engines and transmissions. These were not previously requested. A lot of the expenses have been delayed. We had gotten buses from Lynx and we just simply didn't see the need to immediately replace engines and transmissions in some cases. In other cases, we got surprised because some engines and transmissions didn't live the life that we would have liked. So that's what this request is about. Commissioner McCauley, these numbers are slightly different from what you originally saw.
Okay.
We added one Voigt transmission to the mix, which increased it by $11,000. So in the event, we're asking for board approval for $220,200.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you, Mr. Cheney. And now we can talk about the East Polk.
May I ask a
Yes.
question? It's not related to, thank you, Madam Chair, not related to this particular situation, but while I have Mr. Cheney there. How are we doing? And I ask this question because it just been roaming in my particular brain. When we take these buses, we do from Lynx, and you do what you need to do to reconfigure whatever the proper word is to make them really, drivable and street ready for us. Are we having any downtime when it comes to those after it's done? You see a thing that we have to take the bus off the road or breakdowns because of what we're doing? Are we seeing any of that kind of stuff at all? Does it interfere with our flow of traffic, for lack of better words, to keep buses on the road?
Quite the opposite. Okay, and it's really interesting that you asked that question. My intent is not to beat my own drum, but when we have taken buses in from Lynx, okay, so we're now up to 9 buses from Lynx.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 7 other than 9 are in service. Last month you approved the cost of renovating the next 2 that I've received. Okay, I think we started this 4 years ago. Okay.
And it's been several years, yes.
Yeah, they don't have downtime. Okay, matter of fact, I see more downtime from a brand new bus from Gillig than I do, and I see more failures from a brand new bus. And that has to do with working out all of the kinks and new technology than I do with a older bus, older technology that we have completely rebuilt. And our expenses, okay, range from a low of $30,000 when we rehab a bus to a high of just over 90,000. So we had one bus that came in with kind of a piston hanging out of the side of the block. The transmission was trashed. Okay, the interior of the bus looked like terrible. Okay, so we redid the interior. We changed the engine and transmission. We made it a hybrid electric. Okay, in the cooling system. So hybrid electric cooling means that it has an electric fan that cools it. The efficiency is achieved. You also get, as a sidebar, anywhere from 7 to 15% increase in fuel economy because of the efficiency of that particular service. Something that can't be quantified is because that particular system is so efficient. Okay, you also see a reduction in failures, meaning that it cools the engine well enough. Okay, that you'll probably never see an overheat. Okay, unless the total system fails. But the tough part about that is trying to measure something that doesn't happen. Okay, how many times do your buses not fail? Okay, because of something you did. Okay, that's really tough to measure. But overall, the performance on the Lynx buses has been nothing short of fantastic. The reception from the drivers, they oftentimes will prefer to drive them or some of the other buses that we have. I won't say any of the other buses, but some of them. Okay, so the acceptance has been very good. The performance has been excellent. I think it's worked out really well. And anytime we can delay an expense, okay, such as I just previously talked about, that if I get the bus and I don't need to change out a Voith transmission, and the rebuild on a Voith is $11,000, but it usually is good for 500,000 miles after that. On the financial side, okay, David projects that the life of the vehicle, okay, when he's amortizing the cost of the rehab, to be 4 years. Okay, I have no idea how long these buses will last. Okay, because I can change the engine and transmission again. Okay, and we don't have the erosion that you have to deal with coming from the north. Again, my intent is not to beat my own drum, but you know what? This is an item you can go on and on and on and on about. Okay, because it's worked really well for us.
That's good to hear, because I think it's important for even the public to understand, you know, what's going on, how, you know, what we're doing to keep transit in place and what we're doing to get buses and keep those flowing and keep the system running.
All right, so in order for full disclosure, okay, I have 9 success stories. Okay, I have a couple of failure stories. Okay, and the failure stories going back probably 2 years ago. Okay, we acquired 2 buses from West Palm Beach. Those buses are still sitting in the corner. We haven't invested anything. Our total investment in those buses was the transportation cost to get them here. We were going through some help issues. We did not have enough help. I couldn't start the program. I delayed it. The Lynx buses became available. The Lynx buses were sure to get here. It took over a year and a half. We're working through issues with Lynx. They weren't sure if they were going to rehab them themselves and keep them in service. So the 2 West Palm buses probably bring back to the board for disposal. There were a couple of buses out of the county. They were Freightliners. Okay, they have lived their useful life. Okay, but we had to drag them to the finish line. Okay, we have one other bus that is not going to make the finish line. Okay, so those are. I'm not saying we have 100% success. Okay, but I'm not afraid of my failures. Okay, because we've had enough success. Okay, and we could bring that out too.
Yeah.
The successes outweigh
the failures.
And you learn from the failures. Commissioner Santiago?
Yeah, I just want to know what is the price of a brand new bus so that I can have some comparison.
$465,000.
I'm sorry?
$465,000.
Okay, so I'm glad we're doing this.
It's a
We're good
house.
stewards, Commissioners.
Definitely.
And 465 was the last bus we bought.
Wow.
I have not pursued whatever
Purchase,
the cost increases due to consumer price index, which is typically up by 2% per year, 2.5.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Cheney's leadership in frugality is a fulcrum point of efficiency and route frequency that we would not otherwise have.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
This is the best practice that should be shared with those other people.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's right.
They'll buy our buses.
Except for links. They keep giving
We
us
need
their
them,
buses.
Thank you for that detail.
Thank you,
Mr.
yeah.
Cheney. That's very, very helpful. I think.
And it's good to hear.
Yes, it's very good.
Before I get started on the presentation, I do want to correct one thing that was talked about earlier. Okay, on the CARES Act funding, okay, we haven't spent anything yet. And again, for complete disclosure, internal discussion within the organization, okay, it was my intent to bring forward the board item, okay, to approve the A&E services in February. And that didn't happen because I couldn't answer certain questions. And the questions are related to commitment for funding on the operational side. So we spend the money on the CARES Act side and we create a facility with capital money, okay? And we even project that there will be a savings of 25,000 deadhead miles per year. And we can project out what that cost savings might be, okay? But does that offset any operational increase that we have? And we don't have that information today, okay? So part of the discussion, if I was to look for outcomes on this presentation, the outcome would be one, board discussion and direction on the project, okay? Probably a commitment on operational funding, okay? Because this is done over in the county and a commitment on the county side, because I can't answer that right now, okay? So those are the outcomes that I would look for. Okay, so again, the purpose is to facilitate the discussion. We're talking about the history of service in East Polk County, the history and prior discussions on plans for the East Polk County Garage, current plans, Winter Haven, and the Route 27 corridor. We'll look at route maps and I'll talk about challenges. Next. In the history, prior to 2015, we were running the maintenance on fixed route vehicles for the county. The paratransits were maintained by the county facility. Okay, in 2015, it changed after that in that we ran the service and we also ran all the maintenance. Next, James. In the history of multiple road location, okay, there was an agreement between the county and the city of Winter Haven that the county could use that location. They were using it as a bus storage facility. And that agreement was between the county and the city of Winter Haven. After the merger, we also went through a serious fleet reduction, okay? There is a mandate from the federal government that said you should only be operating with a 20% spare factor, okay? On the county side, we're well beyond that. When you're operating outside of the 20%, it actually represents an increase in maintenance because you have more vehicles to maintain. So we reduced that. We made a lot of changes and we no longer needed the multiple road facility, so we didn't use it. In 2017, we began looking at it and saying, you know, we could really realize a savings if we used the facility and we had a small crew of people stationed there, okay? And if it had the ability to refuel buses rather than going to county facilities to refuel, Okay, operators would bring their bus back. Operators don't need to be paid for the trip time to go refuel their vehicle. You just bring it to the location, we refuel it, and it's ready to go the next day. And the project fell apart. Next slide. This is an aerial view of the multiple road location. I'm going to point out a few things here, okay, that will become relevant later. Okay, so this is the boundary on I believe it's the west side. Okay, this is a boundary here. Okay, again here, this is a retention pond, dry pond. Okay, this here is an antenna for the I don't know if it's the county, the city of Winter Haven, but the antenna that's there right now is going to be replaced. This piece of land here, okay, city of Winter Haven is talking about putting a multi-story building on top of that land to increase their office capacity. The distance from this point here, okay, to an intersection that's off the picture, where utility connections would be made is roughly about 1,100 feet. Okay, so when we talk about bringing utilities to this property in the way of water, sewer, communications, the connections are 1,100 feet this way. There is a utility easement, okay, that passes through here. It's actually power lines. And the electric for this property, okay, there is a pole here. It taps into a transformer that's over here, and it's a drop through the air. Okay, so that's where the electricity comes from presently on that property. Okay, those points and pointing that the geographical things out will become relevant in a few minutes. Next one. So if you diagram it, okay, this is one of the first plans that we had looked at to say if we just work with the property that we have, what could we end up with? Okay, and basically we put a concrete apron in, we put a fueling facility in, a work pad, and a modular building all over in the corner. And we'd have the ability to work on vehicles, refuel them, and the heavy traffic areas would be concreted, not on the light asphalt that's there now. We'd restripe it, new directions, okay, change the lighting, and that was the initial improvement that we had talked about. At that time, when we were looking at this, we were working with AECOM, and I said, okay, just in case you wanted to project a 5-year growth, what would you end up with? Okay, next slide, James. So nobody said we could have more land, okay? But we decided to project it out to say, okay, if you're not using the land, maybe we could talk about that. So if we did that, this was one of the options that it could be configured, where you had a 5-bay maintenance garage, you had a chassis wash, you had parking for the employees, parking for the buses, okay, fuel connection. Go on to the next one, James. Okay, this is a different configuration and somewhat more consolidated, not taking up as much roadway, but again, employee parking, garage, bus parking, retention pond, because we knew that the pond is going to become extremely important as you develop the property. But that was, this I would have to say was probably one of the favorites, okay, to say that if you wanted to build a garage on the East Polk County side that had the ability to service all of East Polk County and a projected 5-year growth, then this would be it. Price tag on that, $11.6 million. Okay, and that's with the land donated. Okay. Now, if you go back to the other one, that when I said we put the fuel tanks in the corner, we put the modular building in the corner, and we have a work pad. We put in a concrete apron. Okay, that is roughly the $1.2 million project. Okay, and actually it's a little bit less than that. Next one, James. Okay, This is kind of like a map that we use to decide if we were in the right place, okay? And just put in the distances from, it's 15 miles from Lakeland, 13 miles from Haines City, 14 miles to
Like Wales?
12 to Bato. I think this is
Lake Wales.
Lake Wales.
Okay, and to say, okay, you're in about the center of East County. You go to the next one. I think I lost a few slides. Yeah. All right. What I wanted to do is go back one, James. This is the concept that we're currently working with the CARES for the CARES Act funding. Okay, it was the basic primary. I can get this done. So in what we've done so far, we haven't spent any money. We've got a task order from AECOM to say that if we're going to do the engineering work, this is what it's going to cost, and it's based on this configuration. So you would have just a modular building, a work pad, fueling facility, a concrete apron that extends out, and would clean up the entranceways. And that would also bring the utilities into this property, and all of that would be done for the $1.2 million. On construction costs, right now the estimate for the engineering task order is $266,000. Okay, and the overall project cost is $1.2 million. The concerning point for me was that by standards, okay, usually A&E costs run roughly about 12%. Okay, that's 22%. Okay, part of the cost is associated with bringing the utilities in, because along the roadway, we're going to have to put in lift stations. Okay, because you're going to be pumping. And the interesting part is that the behind the property is the sewage treatment plant. Okay, but it doesn't change the need. Next. So we looked at on the East Polk County side. Okay, if you look at Motor Pool Road, where is it located? Okay, and it is approximately in the center of the service area. Okay, next slide. And so too is in this location at approximately the center of the service area. Okay, next slide. Okay, the challenges are commitment from the county for operational and CIP funding for this facility. Okay, the size of the property may not allow for growth in the future. When everything fell apart in discussion with the city of Winter Haven the last time around, we had begun talking about whether or not we had the ability to grow the property. Okay, and that fueled the fire for canceling the project. So that's probably not going to happen. Tyndall Oliver is currently performing the feasibility study for the Polk County Planning Commission to identify potential East Polk County sites. So they asked for the work that we did in 2017. We shared that. Is that going to take us anywhere? I don't think so yet. Okay. High cost of engineering service. Okay. The high cost of bringing utilities to the property. The question in my mind is that if the city of Winter Haven has a desire to develop the land that's beside us and they're going to put a multi-story building in, then bringing the utilities down the street, okay, might be a shared cost. When I asked that question to a person that's on my level in the city of Winter Haven, he said, "You're above my pay grade." Okay, so he said, "You can take that one someplace." So I can give you the standard answer. It's no.
County School Board.
This requires, to start the project off, okay, it requires drawings that will be submitted electronically to the planning board in the city of Winter Haven. Okay, and that's kind of where we're at.
Great presentation. Thank you, Joe. Mayor.
Well, to Commissioner Lindsay's point, when you think about the 11.6 million opportunity that we could seize now, provided it became an objective for all parties, get the land that we'll regret we didn't do later, do the engineering that could have been consolidated now, and all the utilities that can be provided. I would think we'd want to seize this moment for that scope.
I agree wholeheartedly. Between CARES 1 money, CARES 2 money, county money, wherever it's come from, now's the time to take advantage of that. I can tell you the county commission is committed to the service on the east side. And it's not short-sighted to do just what fits today. This may, our partners with the city of Winter Haven, this may or may not fit their long-term needs. While I'm not a Tyndall Oliver fan, I think if they've already engaged, then we can, between LAMTD staff, the county's facilities people, and whatever work's done so far with Tyndall Oliver, I think we can expedite a solution that provides for the long-term needs, even if it's phased over time, but let's get the land to accommodate that. And I think that the O&M obligation will follow. So,
Commissioner Walker.
And hearing what I heard Mr. Chang share, and as we're having discussion now, I'm looking at feasibility, as well, and growth potential as well. But then I raised a question about will we have the relationship with Winter Haven? I also have a relationship.
We do, yes, we do.
And to do what we need to be, what needs to be done.
This was kind of a leftover piece of property. And the worst thing you could do is invest in a piece of property because you have it, not because it's the best location. Back in my drinking days, when the drink got diluted, you had more Coke, then you had more whiskey, you had more Coke, you had more whiskey, then you throw it out and start over. So let's throw it out early.
Somehow that applies.
Throw it out early.
I'm trying to understand the analogy.
So I think Commissioner Santiago can take the message back to our colleagues and get this on track.
That would be good. Yes.
Well, I was, you want him or me?
Well, let's let Commissioner Santiago and then I'll circle
Okay,
back.
well, I was just going to say,
yet.
you're absolutely correct. I'm really excited to see that some investment is going to be made in the East County because as we said over and over and over, it's the fastest growing area. And the growth is going to demand more services. So I commend you for looking at the East Polk County site. I agree with the fact just because we own the land doesn't mean that we have to invest in it. I think the growth is going to demand us to look into growing the site or where we built. So I agree with that.
Commissioner Walker.
Well, I was just going to say that too. I think, we know East Polk is where the boom is. And I think it's important to make sure that we have what need to be done to support and, the operations of transportation. Because I agree with you, what your comment you made earlier, Commissioner Santiago, to have everything here and focus the drive while we were there, it dilutes, I think, some of the challenges. It brings about challenges. So I'm in favor of making sure we could do this, but I just still want to make sure it's done, and with consensus from both entities that are involved, so whatever we can do to make it happen, I'm for a win-win.
I feel strongly about the county's commitment. So if it's a commitment of the county, that kind of bumps it up on our list because we have to have that support. We can't do it. And I think it might have upfront seed cost, money to set everything up. But in the long term, the money that we pay in operational costs to tow buses back over here, to move everything across the county. I mean, we're larger than Rhode Island. So it would be more efficient and good stewardship of us, I think, to invest in the beginning. So in the long term that we can help with that growth. And, that side of the county, I think more people there are used to public transit, the people who are coming in and they want public transit and they need public transit. So I think that's part of our commitment. Yes,
Well, I
Commissioner
think
Lindsay.
we need to remember that the county has the obligation through the various grants and state and federal, whatever, to provide that service.
Yes.
And we made the commitment to create the matching dollars to provide it. Now, as cooperating with local government and using the most cost-efficient way to deliver service, we've contracted with this board to provide that service. So we can't expect you to provide the O&M and the capital to do it.
Exactly.
We're just asking that we will continue to meet our obligations so that our contract with you can be effective in the most cost-effective manner.
And then those
That's what
that,
it boils down to.
Well, and we want to serve the entire county. I mean, that's why we exist. So it's not just
That's the
like
only
such a-
way we're going to succeed is to have a unified mass
Yes.
transit provider.
That's
I've
right.
always
that's right.
suggested that perhaps the name should be
I agree.
Citrus Connection Plus, you know, because it is, the plus is adding more services in both geography and types and door to door and handicapped and all those kind of things. It is more than just when they come down Florida Avenue.
I think this, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think, and then the perception. When people perceive, you know, transportation, they don't just think, I think they think overall county. And I think it's important we make sure that we can help support that perception in order to get what we want to get to. And eventually we're going to be able to get there, hopefully, you know, and take on some more resolve when it comes to, you know, moving toward dollars that we're going to need even more from people to understand why we need transportation for this entire county.
Mr. Cheney, thank you for that presentation. And also, I just want to say this is a great segue into next month's board retreat. I think
Yeah.
this long-term vision of how we want to provide service throughout the county is vital to serving our residents well. So I'm glad that we're doing this before the strategic plan and that we'll continue to discuss it there. Is there anything further on that fleet maintenance? We good? Okay, moving on to agenda item number 7, revenue services, Mr. Dunn.
Good morning, Chair, Mayor, Commissioners.
Morning.
Thank you for your time and attention this morning. I have 2 agenda items to bring before the board. The first, we'll start with 7 Alpha. This is. Yeah, well, 7, how about 7A? We'll go with 7A.
Go.
I like
Military.
936.
That's right.
The purpose of the agenda item is engender approval from the board as it relates to our 5-year extension of the Vail ITS contract. So in 2017, the board originally approved the Vail contract. This is the service contract that provides our ITS system here at the district. It does a lot of very important things. A lot of the essential functions that operations depends on: route tracking, fare collection electronically, My Stop Mobile, and many of the other essential functions that we do depend on this service contract. It expired in February, and you have a copy of the contract attached at the end of the agenda item there before you, and we would need approval to continue doing business with the Avail company.
Do I have a motion on the floor, Mr. Mayor?
So I'll motion to approve, and then when we have a second, we'll have some discussion.
Yes. All right, and let's open it up for discussion, Mr. Mayor.
So there's a second. How pleased are you? And is this the right thing for us to do for 5 years?
Great question. So I'm more and more pleased every day. In fact, I would say that in the last 6 months, we really kind of took this opportunity to get better at. As we've gotten better as users, like there's a lot of essential people here that do things that this thing, like Billy Gray, for example, our electronics technician.
Okay.
However, what we really struggled with the first couple of years was the user. And we've done a really good job, especially over the last 6 months, of making sure that, what does David Prasad always say, garbage in, garbage out, right? And since we've really tightened up our user capability, it has been a great tool for us. It supports every other thing that we would want to do. There's some items that in the future I would like to do with this system that can really keep us, I don't want to say on the front line, but, you know, technologically relevant. For example, electronic pre-trip inspections on the bus, things that we can do that really improve our ability to deliver service, but more importantly, improve the community's ability to interact with the service. So, long story short story long, I do think it's the right thing.
Okay. Commissioner Lindsay?
Well, I had the same concerns Mr. Mutz did, that we got off on a rocky start to begin with.
Sure.
And if we exceeded expectations, maybe our expectations weren't too high enough. So if we're moving progressively in that direction, then willing to try it again. But it was a rocky start.
Absolutely. The overpromise, under delivering.
Broken commitments.
Yes.
Yeah.
The broken promise.
Yes.
specifically to then Chairman Hall's question about mobile ticketing
Yes.
was something that they delivered on only by partnering with Masaba. And that Masaba app is up and running. We followed the tax collector's lead in charging the credit card processing fees to the user because it is a premium service. So it's there, it's for our user. It's not well used right now. It's something that we can definitely improve, but it is there. They've met that commitment. The only downside for the user is there's two apps. There's an app for where's my next bus? How do I access the system? When Dave Walters pushes out alerts that there's a water main break. And then if you're going to mobile ticket, you need to use another app. But at the end of the day, they did deliver on their promise but had to use a different company. And since then, I think the relationship has been better than it has been. And a large portion of that has been because of Billy Gray and the fact that he's able to do a lot of the technical work that normally we would have to pay a Vail to do or wait in line to do. We're able to have that done here. So for an example, Joe was in a situation where vehicles were going to be delayed because they were on the Gillig line and they did not have the Avail technology. And so what Joe said is just deliver the buses and we'll have Billy do it. There's not a lot of transit agencies our size that could do that. So,
we're blessed.
I think that you're absolutely right. It was a very rocky start, but at the end of the day, they delivered in a way that they at least fulfilled the promise basically, and it's working relatively well.
Commissioner Walker?
I was just going to mention, I've always been pleased how we, being a small transit authority in some sense, and have the technology that we use to support, I think, what the average Joe Blow rider will want to have and be about. Because as I've traveled and many of us travel, but I use the public transit systems where I go purposely just to make sure I can see some things and how things going. And I've said this before, in being a big city I was just a year or so ago, we were able to do a lot more traveling than we are doing now. And that was Seattle. I was just blown to see how their transit system as far as buses was concerned. And I'm like, wow, we're better than this. And what was going on. And my wife and I traveled around the Seattle area. And I thought, wow. So when the Vail came, I was looking for all the whistles. And again, I do agree with, and I'm just prolonging the subject matter, but it was a rocky start. I'm encouraged by if staff is saying this is still continuing to go this route and make it happen.
We always talk about the investment of money and what we get out of it, but there's another side of the coin to look at, the investment that we took in, and we don't talk about this a lot, but we should talk about it more, the training that not just our staff went through to utilize the system, but the community. They now have been exposed to it long enough to where they're good at using it. They like the way it's done. Even if we made changes to the routes and the service itself, if they have that same interface, again, back to the way they interact with us, there's been an investment there. And to me, it's a positive thing.
Okay.
Mayor Metz?
And principally, that's that they can see where the bus is and know what time they can time their arrival to the stop.
But to me, what's really great about it is how they can make decisions for transit based on that. I mean, just as Commissioner Walker was talking about, you go to a new city, how do you ride? Where do you go? What's a better bus to ride? They can make all those decisions because it's very visual.
Do they have an intent to do the ticketing in their system in this next 5-year period of time, or will those stay standalone?
I don't know that answer to the question, but Joe's head's about to pop off.
That is the one answer that they owe us.
Yeah.
And we're still holding them their hands of fire on that. Okay. So we're expecting that. Okay. I don't think I'm going to get the answer within the next 2 months. Okay. Because they're still trying to figure out how they work with Masabi, whether or not they need to be a primary or secondary, the technology that's used on their fare card and the technology that is used on the Masabi fare card and the Masabi mobile app, okay, are different. And they have not yet been able to do this with it. Okay. They may get there, but we don't have any guarantees on that. Okay. What we do have a guarantee on is everything that's important to us. Okay. One, you still owe me the answer. Okay. I know what the configuration is going to be for our paratransit vehicles and how that's going to be set up. I did not know that 6 months ago. So I've got that answer right now. We're good. We have been stalling on moving forward with other projects with Avail. Okay, which you probably see that come up in another month. Okay, which is, as Aaron had mentioned, it's the operative pre-trip, post-trip, electronic recording. Okay, I don't need the paper anymore. It's in the system. Okay, and closed loop, which is that if I say there's a problem, okay, it creates an incident report that has to go full loop so that anytime I want to see what everybody's response in the organization was to it, it's all in one place.
Nice.
If there is an accident, if there is an injury, okay, it all goes into the incident management. In addition to that, okay, a total integration with the vehicle.
Service predictability.
Yes, okay, or if any trouble codes go off on the vehicle that are triggered by the engine, the transmission, or the onboard CAN system, okay, they send me an email, okay? So before I get the telephone call, I've already got the email that says you're having a problem, okay? So that's where we're headed, and you may see that next month.
Awesome. Yes, ma'am. Commissioner
I
Santiago.
heard you say that you're very pleased with this, and I'm just getting familiar with this program. Have you looked at other companies to see
So glad.
the comparison? And my second question is, if there is a breach in contract or something happens midway, because 5 years is a long time, something happens midway, what are our options with this company?
So for me, I'm not a contract specialist. Before presenting this item to the board today, I spoke with our personal manager contract. And basically what they said is from year to year, we have some protections. But I would think it would depend specifically on what the actual problem is.
But we do
Are
have
there
options.
protections? Yes. Specifically what they are, and can I speak to them intelligently? No, ma'am, I cannot.
To answer the question more directly, what we're paying for in a contract is we're paying for the maintenance of the system. So if something happens and the system stops working, or I'm having a problem, I can pick up the phone, I can contact a 724 complaint area, and someone's going to get back to me and address my problem. Okay, and so we're paying for the use of the system, and we're paying for the maintenance of the system, and we're also paying for upgrades. Now, on breach of contract, because they stopped doing things that they owe us, okay, there is always an out on that, okay? And so it's a 5-year service agreement is what it actually is. So for 5 years, so if we stop paying, they'll stop providing service, okay? But if we get pushed to that point, okay, we're probably not gonna care. The other question that you had is in, compared to other companies that do similar things. Back in the actual installation of equipment and the agreement with Avail began in 2013. And what we did is we piggybacked off of Collier County. Okay, within the next, so we put it in, the agreement started in May. Everything was up and running, okay, by December of that same year. Okay, so all buses had the installation done, it was all up and running, and life was good. We were approached by a consortium, okay, which is centered out of Hillsborough County, Hart, okay, and there were 5 counties that were involved in that to participate in a different fare collection program, okay, and the company that was awarded the contract, the name of the company was Innit. It's a German-based company, and so they got under contract. We refused to participate, and the reason that we refused to participate is that we would have to upgrade their all of the fare boxes. No one's going to help us with that. Okay, the fare boxes that we have in our buses, I formally refer to as dumb fare boxes because they don't have any internal electronics. Everything that has intelligence is outside the fare box. The cost of one fare box, when it is a self-validating fare box, is $17,000 per fare box. Okay, multiply that out, and I needed $1.2 million, okay, to participate in that INIT program. And then they would do the, and then they would do the upgrade, which is the AVL system and the smart card, okay? So I said, no way, we're not doing this, okay? Furthermore, I'm not gonna train a technician, okay, on how to repair the self-validating fare box with all of the electronics and the mechanisms that are in the inside, and I'm extremely familiar with it, okay? So when I worked at Lynx, I had one guy that did nothing but that for 40 hours a week. So we didn't need that. What we needed something that was going to give the information that we needed and do it in a very timely, cost-effective manner. The other thing that happened here, when I first got here, there was at least 7 breakdowns per day, okay? And there was kind of like a scenario that repeated itself. So if one guy got on the bus and put a bent penny in the fare box, everybody else rides free, okay? Because the fare box jammed, okay? I don't care if the penny's bent. I don't care if it's dilapidated. I don't care if you put in a fake penny, okay? It's gonna fall through the dumb fare box right into the bottom, and we'll count it later, okay? And the operator gets to see the fare because it sits on a plate before it gets dumped, which is electronically targeted when he qualifies the fare and touches the touchscreen, okay? And then at the end of the day, or not even at the end of the day, actively throughout the day, it's communicating back how many people are on board with us, okay? What type of people they are, whether students, they could be UPC, the universal fare, it could be a number of different things. So it could be seniors, okay? It qualifies everybody, tells you the quantity, okay? And they're on board and they're riding. I don't have to wait for the information. I have it instantaneously as they're driving the bus.
So Commissioner Santiago, in summary, we were able to do the entire Avail project for less than it would have cost to just upgrade our fare boxes to start to participate in the other program. This was the best product that we could buy at the time based on a promise of a end that was given to then Chairman Hall that turned out to not be true. But the overall programs worked very, very well. Spending $1.7 million to collect 75 cents in bus fare just didn't make any sense. It's just an industry norm that they want that validation. And we said, no, let's do the best we can with the resources that we have and move forward.
The other point is that in 2017, we had the discussion with Hart and Innit about possibly going in that direction. Okay, their program began, okay, and it's not 100% running yet. Okay, so this is 4 years later. Okay, we were up and running at 100% within 7 months.
But if we got the exit strategy and
in place.
Yep.
All right.
If I may
So-
too, the procurement function is under finance, and when we invested our capital in this product, the vendor likewise did the same. And given the changing scenes of technology, when we got the capital investment in the product, we also purchased a 5-year ongoing agreement. And that's to protect both the vendor in terms of the security of the equipment and us in relying on their functionality and support. And this is a second 5-year, so we did look at all those issues.
Yes. Mr. Darby?
Yes, Chairman Carley, I have reviewed the agreement, and Mr. Cheney has accurately described the situation with regard to termination. But one question is payment to be made. There's a choice here between a 5-year commitment with an annual payment at the start of each plan year or a single payment for the entire plan.
Annual, right?
Is it?
It's annual, it's annual.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Okay, yeah, that's good clarity.
Annual amount instead of,
Thank you.
Yes.
because there's a choice there that we didn't make.
Thank you for that
Mr. Garvey.
clarification.
It's laid out in the summary, kind of the part.
Yeah, the funding.
Item, I just didn't read it verbatim. just so
Okay,
board members
I just wanted to
understand.
clarify, we're just paying 1 year at a time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
There's more to that complex issue, and commissioners from the county may be fully aware of it. There's something called Certificate of Participation, which is a lease program for typical government and private investors. What it does, this board can elect not to appropriate funding for the annual lease. So the vendor give you that option. If you choose to pay 5-year, they're protected. If you choose annual year, then it forces them to maintain the services, but no guaranteed payment. Because that board can choose not to appropriate funding.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's a technicality.
Right. All right, do we have any other questions for staff? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now 7B or Bravo.
You on top of it, madam.
The intent is agenda items are agenda board approval for the purchase of 2 administrative vehicles. The primary purpose of these administrative vehicles will be utilized in a supervisory capacity. There's approximate cost of $25,000 each for these vehicles and funding available in the CIP budget. This is an important thing for us because currently we have a supervisor without a vehicle. We have 2 of them and we have some sharing them. We'd like to get in front of this before hurricane season comes this May, making sure that everyone's got transportation domicile of duty and that we maintain our readiness.
Do I have a motion on the floor?
Motion approved.
A second. And a second by Commissioner Santiago. Do we have any discussion or questions for Mr. Dunn? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you.
Now we're on to item number 8, Human Resources, Ms. Marcy McCabe. Hello.
Okay, hello. The best for last. Okay, so this is just informational. There's no approval needed. I want to give you a little bit of history. We are discussing and we'd like to kind of revamp and get our employees to help us a little bit more when it comes to recruiting. We kind of hit a wall about 2 years ago. It's been very challenging. We've tried all different avenues. And then of course, when the pandemic hit, it just became even more of a challenge. Just for an example, in February, we vetted about 115 candidates. We offered or actually hired 2 that just started. So any help that we can get is greatly appreciated. Revenue Services, of course, they're being very patient with us, but we need to get bodies in the seats. We have 12 fixed route positions that are open and 3 para. So we'd like to change the structure. We're going to try it for about 3 months instead of $200 given once after 6 months and then another after a year. We'd like to give it to them after 90 days once that candidate has passed their probationary period. So it's just informational if you have any questions.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
How did you get to the amount,
Which amount?
the $200?
Actually, it's been in the handbook. We've had it there for years. I've been here 7 years and it's
Still
kind of
same.
always been that way in those same.
You're just changing the timing of payment.
Yes, we're just gonna try it for 3 months and see if, because the drivers know what we're looking for. They're not going to, give us somebody that's not going to be better than them or as equal. And I think it will help. We're also looking at other avenues, things that we haven't done in the past. We're gonna get yard signs. We're gonna, we're kind of going out of the box. We've been working with Career Poke Source, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, all kinds of people to help us and hopefully it'll work. If not, we're gonna, try something else. So you might see me next month.
So after you do this attempted work, I think then it would be good if it has not been successful to talk
Right, we'll go
about
back to the
some other aspects.
Yeah.
But we are looking at what other companies are doing. Pay is a big thing, sign-on bonuses, all kinds of things. So before we do anything, where we have to ask for more money, we're trying all this budget neutral stuff first.
Great. Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you for the
Appreciate
information.
it. Agency update from the director.
Chair, thank you. So agency updates, I want to thank Juan Cano, Jay Steinbauer, and the rest of Joe's team, but specifically Juan Cano and Jay Steinbauer. Driver shields are installed on 100% of our fixed route and paratransit vehicles to protect the drivers further from COVID-19. I truly, having them install them on paratransit was almost a custom job per vehicle. So I really am appreciative of that. advising the board, as you may have seen, the Florida Supreme Court struck down 4-1 the Hillsborough transportation tax, deemed it unconstitutional as the list of projects was not specified and how it was to be paid. I'm happy to say that, just again, in retrospect, looking at My Ride, My Roads, we definitely had that box checked on how the roads and rides was going to be spent. So we'll continue to hope for the best for Hillsborough moving forward and see what they do with the $275 million in taxes that they collected. That'll be
$500 million.
Was it $500,000 now? Okay.
$500 million.
$500 million. Okay, 500.
million.
All right. CARES funding. Aaron just texted me that the 3:00 call has been moved up even further, so we should know things quickly about what that means for transit. As the chair knows, and the board members from last month, we are moving through a grievance procedure with the TWU 525. It was a step 1 grievance the last time we met. They have asked that it be expedited from a step 1 grievance to a step 3 grievance, bypassing step 2. We met with our legal counsel and agreed that we would go from step 1 to step 3 if they were willing to insert a mediation prior to a arbitration process. So we are working with our legal counsel on that. We will keep you apprised. As a reminder, this is regarding which version of the contract was approved. What we know and what you have been given is that the union members voted on what was clearly denoted as a draft document. Thanks to Mr. Shibley and Human Resources, every page of that document was watermarked draft. Sections were yellowed out. It was not a final, but we do not do the voting procedure. What was signed by yourselves, the union and myself, and duly witnessed by 3 other individuals was the final version of the contract. So we're working through that and working with legal on that. I want to thank you all for Linda McAlpin's send-off, specifically the chair for participating. Mr. Mayor, thank you for having the key to the city engraved for her. Great. I think anytime you get the key to the city, it is a big deal. Having it hand delivered to your home by a commissioner is about the greatest thing ever. So thank you all for that. We are working with Parwamble at the county EOC for vaccine transportation. What we know at this point is that the federal government requested a list of Polk County residents who may need transportation to get their vaccine. They transmitted a list of 5,000 people to the state. We are attempting to get access to that list so that we can see, are these people we've served? Where did the list come from? How can we help the most? And so we will work with the county and the state to make sure that we are getting the transportation to the vaccination sites, whether that be in our paratransit vehicles with social distancing, or whether we end up using fixed route buses and picking people up, for example, at a church in Bradley Junction and running them en masse to a South Lakeland vaccination site. So we will continue to work on that. The employee engagement survey will be launching on Monday. As you know, the board retreat, and we checked on your calendars. We assumed you didn't want to come on Tuesday for the board retreat out to Circle B and then have a board meeting on Wednesday. So we'll have the board meeting and the retreat on that Tuesday. Dr. Craig Collins was selected as the lowest responsible bidder to facilitate the retreat. If he hasn't met with you each individually, he will be doing that shortly. Dr. Ross has agreed to continue to administer our employee engagement survey, so he'll be joining us from Zoom in California. Commissioner Santiago, the reason that we decided to stay with Dr. Ross for the employee engagement survey is Joe Tedder is kind of the best practices that we have found in Polk County when it comes to employee engagement. And Dr. Ross facilitates his employee engagement survey. For the last 4 years, this board has committed to not changing those questions and heading in that direction so that we can have a trend line.
Yep.
And this year was supposed to be that baseline.
Right.
As I talked to Commissioner McCarley with the union grievance and COVID, it'll be interesting to see what this year's results are.
Yeah.
However, to go with Dr. Collins and change, we felt was disingenuous to the direction that the board wanted to head in, and certainly the results that Joe Tedder's seen and his crew. And we will get further information on the cybersecurity. I just felt like everyone did the best they could answering that question, but we'll get a little bit more specifics on when something happens, what that looks like. And that's the end of my report.
With regard to the retreat, what is your outcome? What do you want to see happen as staff?
I think I can speak for everyone that we desire the direction to see the direction that you want the organization to head in.
Sure.
So we've had the retreat chair since the merger. And I would say that the summary, and senior staff, feel free to pipe up if you'd like. The first couple of years of the retreat was, let's get our feet underneath us. Let's figure out how to become one organization. When the mayor came on board, we had a very internal focus on how we're treating our employees and not referring to folks, and this is a sin I still commit more than I'd like to, not referring to folks as former county employees, but an internal focus. Once we did that, and I think we did that 2 or 3 years ago, Commissioner Lindsay at the retreat really started talking about this ballast of our lack of a diverse revenue source. And so all of these positives that we had in the SWOT analysis on one side of the teeter-totter, Commissioner Lindsay would, I think, rightfully say there's only so much we can do with that. So what I talked about in Dr. Collins with our initial meeting is, okay, recognizing that ballast is still there and going to be there for quite some time. Where do we go from here? Especially now that Mr. Dunn has fully implemented Reroute 2020 with his team. And so we've been very creative in doing it in a budgetarily revenue neutral way. I think we're all looking at what's next. Where do you want us to head from there?
If I may, Chair, just to answer your question in my own way, Tom. What it really does for me, for us, and I can speak for my staff of revenue services, provides us a direction to make our priorities to work from. And I remember the last time that we got the 4 most important things. We used those 4 things: be more innovative, do less with more, and all those 4 main factors drove how we designed Reroute 2020. If you remember the year-long operational cycle I showed you at our last board meeting, we actually take that feedback from the board and tell us what direction to go and set our priorities of work for the year from it. So that's what I really want to get out of it.
Awesome.
To me.
So just be, for my fellow board members, be thinking about what you want to see as outcomes too when you talk to Dr. Collins, because I think that's probably going to be one of his questions of what we'd like to see come out of that. Commissioner Walker?
I defer and wait till I tell Dr. Collins.
Okay, cool. Hey, yes, sir.
Closing comments?
Closing comments.
Share with the board briefly our county commission retreat here about a month ago, and we set our goals to be at a higher elevation than we've done in the past, more further reaching and looking out. And the single item that was most important to this board is consideration of revisiting sales tax to fund transportation needs. And I will say there was some cautious comments from my colleagues as to how we move forward. And is this a need recognized only by a few, or is this a need recognized across, the full spectrum of this county? So share your thoughts and observations with our colleagues as we begin to develop this and roll it out and fine tune it. But basically, the outline proposes to put on the ballot in 2022 a 1 cent sales tax. We'll have a 12-year sunset so that at the end of that 12 years, it can either be renewed. You've either done a good job or you haven't. And that was a fallacy of our initiative a few years ago.
Is 12 too long?
Well, I did that because suggested that as being that's 3 election cycles, and 2 is not enough to get the job, to get the revenues in, do all the things it takes to get these things produced. 12 years gives you this is what we've accomplished. So that it also proposes and this is all a work in progress, a 0.2 mil reduction in ad valorem. Part of that reasoning is you can't add assets of this magnitude and not have dollars set aside for maintenance. Some of our existing ad valorem is maintenance. So if it's not $1 for dollar, it never would be, or it wouldn't be worth doing it. but it is a good faith effort to show that there's some recognition of that. 1 mil, 0.2% millage reduction, project specific. It will be identified. These are the projects in these parts of the counties that are targeted for these improvements. And of course, I mentioned the sunset. So if you have thoughts on the merits of that or the demerits of that, share it with my colleagues who will be making those decisions in the time coming. We're beginning to roll that out to interested parties across the spectrum of the county to see what the reaction is. And if there's buy-in, there was talk of allocating, again, these are numbers yet to be defined, but something in the 80% magnitude to be the actual road itself, the road improvements and the rights of way and the engineering and all that stuff, that there would be some number allocated for alternative transportations, whether that's mass transit or trails and sidewalks and those kind of things. Some amount of it for maintenance, but also in that second or that first 10%, I don't know. Where do we put charging stations? How much should we invest in that as we go forward? We're recognizing that the vast majority of this is to catch up from the hole we're in and a little bit toward where we're going. But so we're, again, trying to strike that balance. If it has merit, ideas on how to tweak it, please share with my colleagues.
Thank you. Yeah, it's only going to get more expensive.
Yeah.
So we need to. Any other closing comments? Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we adjourn at 10:13.
Thanks, Ben.
Yes, thank you.
So we gotta leave growth.
That's right.
How much over later?
You can have one of those meetings. Why the point?
Come over.
Working my law like
He's
that.
asking for that.
You don't need
I don't need that. I use common sense.
Gesture.
Oh, yes.